Welcome back. Hopefully everyone had a good Easter. And we're back into our HTML land. We're looking at the Penguins page. We had a question. We had a question around JavaScript and doing things that are interactive. And I figured we'd have a quick look at one of the foundational kind of ideas. And this is going back a few years, but it's still kind of, 8 years later, and still going. This man Lokesh made a bit of JavaScript. He made it for free, and it's still free. You can still download it for free. And he basically said, grab this, put it into your website, and you can have these cool little JavaScript things. And when I say cool little JavaScript things, you've seen it, but this is what you get. You get the little effect of it kind of fading in, appearing, having a nice little border around it, and having a little X in the bottom corner. Um, you can have the caption as an option as well. And you can also create a group. So if you had, let's say, 5 illustrations in a set, you could just have a thumbnail for a single one. It would open up that set. And then when that image appeared, you could then have a little arrow here when you hover over the edge, which would go over to the next, and then the next, and then the next illustrations. So the lightbox effect will always take up the space. So if we made the browser bigger, and we try to launch it, then it'll take up more of that space, because that's kind of what people will, this is just to adapt to people's screen size, so it'll kind of take up that space. But the general idea behind it is that it's, for the purpose of showing off your work, particularly trying to get your individual thumbnails to be exciting enough for someone to click on. They go in, they see the bigger picture, and they explore. So if you go to the Lightbox website, it kind of gives you a bit of an understanding of, hey, here's how you could use it. Then it tells you what you can do. So grab the actual code, download it, include some actual bits of code, change this particular bit to wherever it is that you put the files you download into. Make sure you're including all these other bits and pieces of JavaScript that's required. Then put it into your actual images. So when you use your images, you add this extra line here. Actually, if you need the caption, you add both of those. But the data lightbox thing, you add that in, and that basically says, okay, well, this belongs to this image one set. In case you had like a road trip set, you would just say data lightbox road trip, and all those images get grouped together. So there's some really cool stuff around that. Then there's some other options that you can change on, how quickly it resizes and appears, as well as how kind of it behaves on the page. So there's a couple of other options that you can kind of modify and change and do some cool stuff around. And then some disclaimer here of which browsers it works in, which ones it won't, and the licensing agreement, etc., etc. So let's assume you've downloaded it. So you've grabbed it. What you would get inside, and all you do is you get this single file from the download button. When you download that, what you get to then do is open up that folder. Inside that folder, you've got some files. The files that we have inside are not all required. These are all the files that get packaged up in this release. So there's like this distribution folder which has the CSS and the images and the JS, which you do need to include if you want to include it. But it also has variations on these. If you look at the examples one, this uses those particular files. And then here's the source files for the actual lightbox, which you can also have a look at there. So looking at the example file, right, if you have a look at that, what it comes up as is this, right? So this is opening up that particular file. In the HTML, it tries to find that distribution CSS folder, which it does, right? So it goes up a folder, which is the .. into the distribution folder, into the CSS folder, and then finds the particular Lightbox minified CSS version that it needs. Then it has all of this code, and then down here it includes the Lightbox plus jQuery minified file. So this particular file and the top file are what we need. And additionally to that, we need those image icons and those other bits and pieces that you can see when you actually click on this and it appears and you get the little X. That's an image that's getting loaded. So those are kind of cool things that you can grab and download and check out. So if we're going to do that, and we'll put it into the Penguins page, and I'll close that down as well. We're going to cheat a little bit because, well, because we can, and we're going to just put things in here that exist in the other page. So I'm going to grab that other one, which I've just closed. So just bear with me while I go back. Okay, so we're going to grab this particular file, and in Dreamweaver, I'm just going to open it. Now note, it's not inside. It's not going to play along with me. That's fine. Let's do it this way. Open with Dreamweaver, please. It's not going to like the fact that these two files and all of this is living in a different folder to my website. So it's going to complain at me if I try to make any changes. So I'm not going to really attempt to do any of that. But if you look in here, all we want to include from the main page is this link. So we're going to grab that, and we're going to say in our Penguins page, we have our style sheet, but we also have this lightbox style sheet. And then from the very bottom of the page, we also want this script, which is going to make the lightbox kind of engaged. So we'll put that at the very bottom here, underneath the rest of our JavaScript. And then what we need to do is make sure that we copy those files over. So we need that file, and we need the top file. Additionally to that, we're going to need this data lightbox, whatever this is, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this whole tag and put that into our lorem ipsum space. So that's the only thing we're going to grab. And then we go in here, find the space where we have the lorem ipsum, which is here. That's a little div, and explore my images, and then paste that in so that we can have that. Now obviously it's not going to work because we don't have this file copied over yet, but I'm going to close down the index page because we don't need it. I'm going to go back to my folder, and we're going to go into the dist, into the CSS, and grab that file. So I'm just going to put that on my desktop, and then I'm going to grab the images, which is the close, the loading, the next, and the previous, because we want those. And I'm going to grab from the JavaScript file. There's a bunch of them, but the one we want is the lightbox plus jQuery minified JS. So I'm just going to grab that one. The rest of this we don't need. We can delete. We don't need anything else from here. We've kind of grabbed everything from that folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that folder. Here's my website folder, and here's the files that I put on the desktop. So from the images folder, I'm going to grab those particular files and put them into my website folder. And particularly in my website folder, I'm going to put it inside my images folder. So I'm going to go next to all of these guys. So there they are. Then what I'm going to do is grab my lightbox minified CSS and move that into my website folder, and specifically into my CSS folder next to the style CSS. And then I'm going to grab the lightbox plus jQuery minified and put that into my JS folder. Okay. All right. Now I don't need that images folder anymore on my desktop because we've cleaned that up. We've now put in all the files that we need. We now go back to our penguins.html page here. We go back to the top, which we had the .dist CSS, and we get rid of the ... because we actually are linking directly to the lightbox minified CSS. I can double check that works once I save it. I can click here and see whether it loads it, which it does, so we're good. And then down the bottom, here's my jQuery lightbox combination file. It is not going to work, and it's going to say lightbox plus jQuery could not be found. Okay, go back to my source code, go back to code view. I'm just going to get rid of that front bit, and I'll save this file again. Click on that again. It's still not happy with me. No, there it is. Okay, so now it's loaded that, and the error message is gone. So that's how we've linked it up to basically have all that functionality. We're still not sure if it works, because this could just be all magic. So what we're going to do is we're now going to go and jump back to our browser, refresh this page, and there it is, explore my images. There's the thumbnail. Click on that thumbnail and it loads up and appears. Now there's only one image in that for the moment, but that's kind of what we've explored. We've looked at a way to do that. Obviously, if this image is too big, we can make that smaller. The one we're actually loading is that particular size, so I'm just going to go into my image and then in here add in maybe a width of 60 pixels and just go back in here and see if that's maybe too small. That's too small, but it'll do. And that is still going to work, and that'll still bring up the larger image, because in the code we are actually loading in the thumbnail and we are linking to the large image. So if you can see, the image name here has the image1.jpg, whereas this one here has a thumb-1.jpg. So those are the things that you would be then changing and mixing around. But step one is always making sure that the special kind of JavaScript animation thing that you want to use is working. Once you've put it in and it's all functioning well, then you can pretty much mess around with it. And if you make any mistakes, you just go back to a version that was working for you. So to keep it safe, I would save everything, and then basically on your desktop make sure that your website folder, you just back it up, and I just say compress website, and there's my zip. I would then probably rename that, and I would say website lightbox, oops, pressed enter too quickly, lightbox working, right? So it tells me what's in there. If I ever make a mistake, I can just delete my website folder, unzip that, get my website back, and keep working. And Dreamweaver doesn't even know that I've done that. I've just rolled back to a previous version of that. So very kind of useful thing for you to do. Remember, if you don't delete this first and you double click that, you're just going to get an extra number. So it'll be website 2, and you still will not be working in here. You'll be working on that folder. So you have to make the plunge, delete them all, unzip it. You'll get the proper folder name, which Dreamweaver knows about, and then you're back in Dreamweaver here. It'll go, hey, something was changed. Do you want to reload? Yes, I do. And it'll grab the latest version from the zip that you just grabbed it from. So some cool things you can do. It is scary because JavaScript can be scary, but if you're really looking at trying to do some stuff that's interactive and animating, you're going to need to take that plunge, because there's a bit of a limit of kind of what you can do in HTML, especially with CSS. So to get additional functionality in, you will need JavaScript. And there's a bunch of libraries out there. The reason I showed you Lightbox right now is because it's one of the oldest, one of the most used libraries out there, so you're going to get a lot of support for it. But it definitely builds upon a lot of other people's work as well, which is a bit of interesting history there. So thanks for checking out this video. Hopefully you guys can get back into it after the Easter egg chocolate binge dieting that we might have all done. As always, if you have questions, leave them down below. But generally speaking, you don't need to do this JavaScript bit, but I did want to show it off because we've had some questions around it recently. So at least it puts it into perspective of what you can achieve with it. So that's about it for today. Thanks for joining me, and see you guys next time.